Welcome, David, to Phocuswright, the Phocuswright
you.
Conference.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, so, you previously founded Morris Air, WestJet, Jetblue, Azul, and now Breeze Airways. ChatGPT confirmed for me that you hold the record for the most airlines founded or co-founded. That's not a hallucination, right?
I don't know if that's a badge of honor or a badge of insanity. I guess it depends on the year, and certainly COVID, was challenging. But
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. Actually, first of all, let me just ask: has anybody here flown Breeze Airways? Few people. Okay. So tell us a little bit about Breeze and what you're doing there.
Well, I don't start airlines just for the sake of starting them. That's the best way to lose all your money, is if you just say, oh, I want to start an airline. You have to have a reason. There has to be an opportunity. And so JetBlue was because JFK was wide open. WestJet was because Canadian Pacific had just gone out of business. Azul is because nobody was flying to 150 cities we fly to. So there was a reason for being. So as I looked back on kind of the U.S. market from Brazil, I saw that there was this trend developing where people were basically flying into hubs, where there's about 125 cities that have lost more than 25% of their air service. Okay. So what happens is, regional jets fly to the hub, and so there was just a lot of nonstop service that was not available. It had never been available, but the demographics of the United States had changed. People were moving around, like people from the Northeast were moving to the Mid-Atlantic section, right, where they were going to Florida, and they needed to get back to weddings and funerals and bar mitzvahs or whatever. And so there was just this community of interest that had developed, and there just wasn't an easy way to move around amongst those centers. So that was the opportunity. And then we found a great airplane. It was an Airbus A220 that had a lower trip cost than a 737 or a 320. And the other airlines were abandoning the 320s and going to 321. So that gap just got wider and wider. Right. So today we have a 137-seat airplane that has 12 first-class seats, 45 extra legroom seats, and the rest are 30-inch pitch, and we have Wi-Fi on board, and we're about 90% of our flights, we're the only nonstop in the market.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've heard, so it's a premium major low-cost carrier is the way I've heard it described. So talk a bit about how you are balancing the premium service with the cost-effective operations.
Well, premium service is, we start out by saying we're seriously nice. So we just train all our people to be seriously nice. And that's really the cheapest way that you can dazzle people. And so that's really, really important. But, what we found, and it was interesting, Delta's announcement yesterday was really interesting. It seems like everyone seems to be coming the Breeze way, in a sense, where we know that there are 25% of the people that want some kind of upgraded experience. And then others will, this nickel and diming for all this stuff is really, people don't like it.
Yeah.
So what we say is, look, we have nicest, nicer, and nice. Delta's saying good, better, best. So it's just kind of the same.
Sounds very similar.
And so we throw out a $39 or $49 fare, and people say, great. And then we say, hey, for another $50, we can give you free Wi-Fi, free check bag, free carry-on bag, and 3 more inches of legroom. And they say, that's an awesome deal, I'll take that. Yeah. Or, hey, for 100 extra bucks, do you want to fly first class? And they say, no, that's even better. So, that's one of the challenges that Southwest has run into. When I started JetBlue, everything was egalitarian. I love the fact that everybody had the same seat, everybody had the same free TV, free Wi-Fi. But the market has changed. People want upgraded experiences, and they'll pay for it. And it's just a matter of real estate on the plane, right? So in our case, because we have a 2 and 3 configuration, and we go first class, we only lose 1 seat per row. So we can offer a first class seat for a lot less. And it's, if I can get more than the real estate it takes up, then it's a positive for me, and it's a win-win for our guests.
So you just touched on the fact that you use the nice, nicer, nicest. I also understand that you've said the niceness is reflected in your hiring practices, and you mentioned the importance of the human touch there. How do you ensure you're hiring nice people, or how do you train for that?
I think it's just you set an expectation. From the time I go to orientation and speak to all of our people, I say, look, you have a choice to be nice or you have a choice not to be nice. And what I've found through all my years is that if you wake up and you're nice and you treat other people nice and they treat you nice, you're just a happier person.
Yeah.
So there's no reason not to be nice.
Pretty simple, right?
Right, it's pretty simple. So I think we just start with that premise, and then we take good care of our people. And, it's just something that kind of evolves, a culture evolves.
What are some specific areas where you think the airline industry overall needs to improve? What needs to be fixed?
Well, I think, it's really remarkable from the time that, I founded JetBlue in 1999, in the last 25 years, the big airlines didn't have a good product. They were all losing money. And then at 9/11, they added a bunch of debt, and then they all went bankrupt. And pretty much, not the big three anyways, and they merged. And then they just took some pages out of JetBlue's page book.
Yeah.
They started, I'm flying down yesterday on a Delta flight with free Wi-Fi, television, and I think they realized that that's what people want. So today, the product that's offered by United, Delta, American is so much better than it was 25 years ago. They're formidable competitors. And so obviously, it's a different world to compete against these guys. And that's why you're seeing, Southwest struggle, JetBlue struggling, Spirit, just filed for bankruptcy. Frontier, is, not as profitable as it used to be. So, so as you step back and take a look at it, I think AI will play a big role in kind of identifying our passengers and our guests and how we market them directly. But hey, the product is so much superior than it was when I started JetBlue.
Let's talk a bit about AI, because of course our theme here at the conference is the new agents. We're talking a lot about AI and about the future with autonomous agents. Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about that and what Breeze might be doing to prepare for an autonomous agent-powered world.
It's one of the things that we started with, and it was a little frustrating sometimes for our guests, is that we don't have a call center. Everything is done through communication, through text communication. So all of our people work at home. Okay. And they can be talking to 6 or 7 different people at the same time, which really helps efficiency. And then obviously, as you get that machine learning and people start answering the same questions over and over again, it becomes better and better. One thing I changed recently is that, we were kind of not calling people at all, but I said, look, if someone's a little frustrated, get their number and call them. So we do that, and we can take care of them. But it just saves so many people. We'll fly on an average day 30,000 people, and we only have 100 people in our whole what we call the guest empowerment team, and they're at home, and then they can be just in time. They can come on if there's a weather or a hurricane or something like that. So that's important. But AI is from a customer perspective, we have this perfect database of all of our guests. We're probably the only airline that has contact information on every single one of our guests. We distribute through Expedia and Priceline and others, but we have that contact information. So we can communicate directly. So if a flight's 15 minutes late, we can let them know. Or if there is a special, we know them and their travel habits, we can send them a special. We know how many people travel with kids, and we can send them a buy one, get one free, or whatever. Yeah. And so that's on the side. On the operations side, there's just so much we can do with predictive maintenance, where we have 6,000 parts on an airplane, and so we can feed all that data into to AI, and we can predictively go and change parts if we see, that this part fails at 1,000 hours and this one's at 980, so let's go ahead and change it. So there's a lot of stuff we can do with AI.
And are you better positioned for some of that as a newer airline, not maybe starting with some of the legacy technology and able to kind of hit the ground running a bit more fresh?
Absolutely. I was listening to Scott Kirby was on a podcast, and he said he spends billions on technology. I'm like, I don't have billions, this is about technology. We have a great team of IT specialists, maybe 35 people. We don't spend billions, but what they're able to accomplish using fresh new platforms and everything new and new programming techniques is really remarkable.
You know, well, you just mentioned that, so all of your customer service agents work from home, you said, and how many total you said you have?
It's like 100, 120, but they're all part-time, so we can bring them on when needed.
So I'm just curious, because Breeze launched in May of 21, correct? So kind of after the really impact of the pandemic the year prior. Do you think you're positioned if there was another kind of catastrophic event that required, you know, a complete shutdown? Is that enough to handle that, do you think, or?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. You know, we had 2 hurricanes came through. We canceled 128 flights. We were able to broadcast to every single one of our guests, give them options of a full refund or rebooking on flights or whatever. You know, one of the things that I really focused on in our operation, we're the #1 airline in terms of least cancel flights.
Okay.
We're the #1. We'll lose your bag less than anybody else. and we're now working our way up the scale to be the most on-time airline. So I think if you can do those 3 things and you're the best at what you do, then you just have these anomalies that come up. You can deal with them a lot easier. You're not so much good happens when you're on time. You know, yesterday we were 93% on time, so we celebrate that with our people because no cancellations, of course. And so you know those are things that that make life those people working at home so much easier when you're on time.
Yeah, for sure. Does it get harder to maintain that as you get bigger?
No, I think it's totally scalable.
Okay. You know, you mentioned Priceline and Expedia as some of your distribution partners. I believe Hopper as well, some distribution.
Yeah, we're on Hopper.
And then you've also recently added Amtrav and Navan for business travel. Talk a bit about your distribution strategy and any plans to expand there, and how important is that business travel segment?
You know, it becomes more and more important. You know, there's one big company we're dealing with right now that, and I think we have flexibility. You know, they use actually their own company airplanes to fly their people around. And I said, look, you know, what do you spend doing that? Let us add all these routes at the same time you do, and just pay us what you're paying, and I'll give you 3 times as many seats as you have today. So we have that kind of flexibility with corporations, and we have a beautiful product, brand new airplanes, Wi-Fi, all the things that business travelers want. So we don't have the frequency you know, we have white planes to Vero Beach. We do 11 times a week with daily service, plus twice on the peak days. But most of ours are 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. But if a business comes to us and says, look, I got this need that I'm moving these people, we can put flights on, we have a lot of flexibility. We have our first government contract where we reward a bunch of routes. So we're flexible. We do, in the first quarter, we'll do about 800 charters. So we do a ton of chartering. We're probably the #1 airline for men's and women's NCAA basketball.
Okay.
Just flew the University of Virginia from Charlottesville to Nassau, then the Bahamas yesterday. So we're flexible, and that comes from being new, and we can innovative.
And being nice.
Yeah, and being nice, of course, always.
So I have to ask you about your take on sustainable aviation fuel.
Yes.
I know that, I think it was last month at the World Aviation Festival, you talked about, you were in a bit of a debate with IATA CEO Willie Walsh. You said it's a complete waste of money, and you questioned the effectiveness and the long-term viability. And yet I know I've heard you acknowledge climate change is a real issue.
Sure.
So what is the solution then?
The solution is to take, so Willie's up on stage, and I'm sitting here listening to him speak, and he said, look, if we went SAF for all of the airlines of the world, we'll increase our costs by $187 billion. And we make $30 billion a year in profit. Yeah. So I'm looking at all these people that are in the industry. I said, look, you guys are all going to lose your jobs, basically, if this nonsense happens. So what do you do to do it? One of the challenges that we have is that we use diesel fuel. So if you take a barrel of oil and you cut about 35% of that cut, you can do diesel, heating oil, or jet fuel. So as everybody on the gasoline side goes to electric vehicles, we're going to have all the refineries that are going to go out of business because they won't have anything to do with all this gasoline. So for our own self-interest, it's much better to go to the other industries, like other transportation industries that actually make sense. I drive a Tesla, and I drive a Tesla not because I feel like I'm doing great for the environment, I'm doing my little part. It's cheaper for me because I go home and plug it in. So if you're on the ground and you're running down the road, then it makes sense economically to go electric. But if you're flying, it makes no sense at all. So instead of spending $187 billion, let's take $10 billion a year, and let's take that $10 billion and subsidize coal-fired plants or diesel fuel plants or anyone that's using diesel or distillates and help them get off of it so it gives us more supply and then we can do something economically viable. The other big problem is SAF. If you did $187 billion, you would definitely affect the food supply.
Right,
you know,
right.
Prices for food would go up, people would starve to death. So the whole thing is nonsense. It's one of these group thinks that everyone's saying the same thing. We also had the CEO of KLM was sitting there, and you know, she's got all kinds of issues with the green agenda in Amsterdam, and they're trying to put farmers out of business and all that. So she can't say it.
Yeah.
I can say it.
Okay.
And so I think she agreed with me, but she of course couldn't say it. But I think things are changing even in Europe.
It's probably a lot more.
When the Germans pay twice as much for electricity, that kind of changed their attitude a little bit.
There's certainly a lot more that we could get into on that topic, but in the interest of time, I want to move on because a completely different thing I want to talk to you about. You have been very open about the fact that you have ADHD, and I've heard you call it your special gift. And you know, chances are, knowing the odds, there are people in this audience also that have ADHD.
If you have entrepreneurs here, you have ADD.
So talk a bit about why you see that as your special gift and how it has influenced the way you lead teams.
You know, I think if you have ADD, there's different forms of it, but mine is, you know, I'm certainly creative, and and this is the critique of my team to me is you simplify everything. That can be a gift or it can be, you know, something that challenges people.
Yeah.
And so I think you just have to surround yourself with really good people that maybe don't have ADD, people that you can push back against you and say, look, yeah, that's a good idea, but this one's a stupid idea. And so we'll just use facts and data to dig down if that's a great idea or not a great idea. And so I think it's just, you know, everybody knows it, and you just have to teach your people to be able to kind of push back and then surround yourself with people that complement your deficiencies.
Okay. You know, as we've discussed, you've successfully launched several airlines. What advice would you have for some of the aspiring entrepreneurs that are here in the travel and aviation space? What might be your tip?
You know, just be extraordinary. You know, it's most companies aren't extraordinary, and so you know, find out what are those key points that make people want to do business with you that can make you extraordinary. You know, for me, and it's taken us a couple years to get there, is to be the most on-time airline, and to have the least amount of canceled flights, to make every single touch point flawless, be flawless in that execution, and if you can't be flawless, make it right with the customer. And so, if you can stick with those principles of just being extraordinary and figuring out how to be better than anybody else, you'll be successful.
Is there anything that you know now about leading a company that you wish you had known 40 years ago when you were launching Morris Air?
Oh yeah, so many. I mean, you obviously learn along the way, and you learn everything. You know, I think, you know, one of the greatest experiences of my life is when I sold my first airline to Southwest Airlines. Herb and I he was my mentor, and I saw how culture could be such a big part of everything. And so that was a big learning experience, and I incorporated that at JetBlue, and then of course at Azul, and doing our best. It's a little harder because we're in 66 different cities, in almost 30 different states, and we're based in Utah, so it's tough to get out there. But what I do is I do Teams calls with 8 o'clock night before last. I was with all of our technicians. Then I do a weekly pilot call with all of our pilots, and a weekly flight attendant call. So you just have to keep, you know, selling the vision and getting people to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, well, your enthusiasm, I'm sure, carries through, so that's great to see. As we're wrapping up, I would love to do just a quick little rapid fire with you. I'm going to say a word, and I just want to hear a 1 or 2 word reaction.
Okay.
Google.
Google. Essential.
Cryptocurrency.
I don't understand it. Not at all.
The OTAs.
OTAs are, they were a dinosaur, but now they're, you would think they were dinosaurs, but they're still a very important part of our business.
All right. Space travel.
Space travel uses, probably not that great on the environment.
Okay. And finally, self-driving cars, very applicable here in Phoenix.
Yeah, it's, I think it's the future.
Okay. All right.
And it's maybe self-flying airplanes someday, who knows?
Okay. Very good. David Neeleman, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.